Hello. Thanks for being here today. My name is Jarrett. I am the Senior Vice President of AI Growth at Wiley. What you just saw in that video is some of the voices and expectations and questions from researchers and authors when it comes to AI. So our goal in this conversation today is to start to demystify AI through the eyes of researchers and authors. AI is a big blob out there, and we want to try to break it down, make it more accessible, figure out what's real now, what's coming next, what may never happen. So before we do that, though, I want to take us back 25 years. 25 years ago was 1999. Raise your hand if you remember where you lived in 1999, where you worked. All right, what were you thinking about then? What was happening, right? You were Y2K. Remember, we were worried the world was going to end, right? We were going to destroy the whole world, Y2K. Also, it was the dot-com boom era. I was living in San Francisco. I was helping to start a little company. It was called YouGripe.com. YouGripe.com helped. It was a place for online complaint resolution. It was basically Twitter long before Twitter was Twitter. And it was hard sledding because we were trying to figure out this internet thing, right? The internet was a general purpose technology. It had some interesting abilities, limitations. We were trying to figure out how is it going to change work? How is it going to change society? And it was hard work, and we weren't particularly succeeding at YouGripe.com. And I remember one day driving to the office, and there was a new sign about a block away. Some new company had moved in about a block away from us. And it was a silly word I'd never heard before. And each of the letters was like a different color. Any guesses on what it was? Google. Google had literally just started a block away from YouGripe.com. So you sort of remember the two powerhouses of the internet boom, right? Google and YouGripe. So no, YouGripe didn't make it. It wasn't successful. But it showcases the moment that we're in. That was a transformative moment where we're trying to make sense of change and to figure out which way to turn and what was going to be long-standing and what was going to just be temporary. And for me, that helps. Those lessons are ones that we can build on. We can learn from that. This moment in AI feels a little bit overwhelming, but we've been here before. Right? We can look at the internet revolution. We can look at the smartphone revolution. We can see the patterns in that, and we can learn from that. We can also see ways that this is going to be different. The AI revolution will happen faster than the internet revolution and the smartphone revolution because those technologies are already in place. The AI revolution is going to favor incumbents as opposed to startups. Why is that? Data. Right? Data is the oil that feeds AI, and incumbents have the data. So just because we've been around for a long time doesn't mean that it actually isn't an advantageous position. So the lessons that I've learned in the last couple technological revolutions are assets. But who's really has some lessons to learn here is Wiley. My employer is 217 years old. They have continued, and we have continued to learn and adapt through disruptions. Sure, the internet boom, the digitization of almost all content, but the industrial revolution, right? Those are the things that Wiley's had to figure out how we continue to forward our mission of getting great content out into the world to solve the world's hardest problems. So what have we learned, and how are we moving forward? We absolutely see the potential of AI to accelerate the pace of research, authorship, reach more audiences. We also know there's a lot of risks to manage with that. We also know that there's a lot of hype. And so we're trying to not just do things because it says AI. We don't want to just chase the hype. We want to lean in and learn. We believe by leaning in and learning and adapting and trying things, we're actually going to move further faster than sitting back and trying to listen and learn, and hope that the answers reveal themselves. And so, what does leaning in mean to us? The first thing is experimentation. We want to experiment. We're trying to use these tools. We're using them in our research exchange, the new platform we've launched for submission screening and peer review of journal articles. We're building out research integrity tools and screens within that platform that leverage AI. We're building AI into our courseware, our iBooks platform. We're using AI to identify compounds that have never been synthesized by humans to figure out if that can accelerate scientific discovery. So we're using and experimenting. Importantly, we're not betting the company. We're not making huge bets, but we're making small and medium bets that are allowing us to learn and figure out what the technologies can do, and importantly, what they can't do. What are the limitations? So we've all heard about hallucinations, the risk of bias. Those are some of the limitations of generative AI in particular. The other thing that we don't talk enough about is Gen AI is not deterministic. It doesn't know the right answer. It's predicting the next best word in a sentence to please you, the person who entered the prompt. And so that means that it isn't actually very good at authoritative tasks. It's better to help push creative tasks forward. So I'm writing a paper. Give me 10 ideas for how I might title this. Or review my abstract and tell me 10 suggestions for how I can improve that. Gen AI out of the box is actually better at pushing my creativity and changing the way I think than answering specific questions where I need an authoritative answer. So it's limited in authoritative tasks. And so we need to figure out different ways to blend in the right answer, or at least the current thinking, and to help make sure that the people who are absorbing that and receiving that understand the source of that information, with what trust I should put into it. And so breaking that down, we're starting to understand when we can use it in more authoritative tasks, which is so important to so many of the communities that we all serve. And in doing this, we understand the risks and we can manage those, maybe minimize those. We can't make them all go away. And we can identify the opportunities and try and elevate those opportunities. So the first thing about leaning in is experimentation. So there's a gentleman named Ethan Mollick at the Wharton School. He writes a lot about AI. And the key thing he says is you have to use it, right? You have to experiment to figure it out because it's a general purpose technology, which means it's not obvious how it's going to help any individual in the room. So one of the things he says is you have to use it for 10 hours yourself to figure out how it might be helpful because your context matters. So how many of you have used a Gen AI tool, invested at least 10 hours in Gen AI? So it's about half. So the other half of this recommendation is spend a little bit of time, figure this out, figure out how it might help the work that you do. So if step one of leaning in, really important other piece of this is listening and learning. So we really want to do this work in partnership. We serve a lot of different audiences, be they authors, academic societies, faculty members, institutional librarians, corporate R&D. So how do we listen to all those audiences and figure out what their challenges are and how to partner to solve those? So we'd like to share today some recent work that we did. We undertook a large study to understand specifically for researchers and research authors these two questions. How are you applying AI in real-world scenarios? And how do you hope and expect to use AI in future applications? Again, we want to break down this blob of AI into manageable pieces. So when we've gone out and talked to them, one thing is clear is as researchers are thinking about AI, it's almost like electricity, right? It has the potential to power devices, but until you plug in an appliance, till you plug in a light bulb, it doesn't actually do much. It may be some sparks, some lights, sort of almost a parlor trick. It's really the applications that you plug into it, and that's what I think there's a lot of interest and excitement around, is what are we going to plug into it? So what are researchers using today So we asked them, what generative AI tools have you used prior to this survey? So ChatGPT is the big one that many of us have heard about, and 8 out of 10 have used ChatGPT. But take a look at this. No other tool up here has more than 18%. We're at the very, very, very early stages of using these tools in research and authorship. So here's the research that we did. It was a 2-part study. The first part was qualitative. We sat down with a lot of researchers. We said, well, how are you using it today? We heard some of those things. We're really not using it today. We really tried to speak to people from different parts of their career, around the world, different disciplines to get a wide-ranging point of view. And they said, we're not using it. And so we went back and sat down with our experts and really tried to understand why that was the case, and identified a number of use cases that we'll talk about in a second to start to hang our hat on, not AI as a big idea, but specific use cases that could use AI to help these researchers. So then we went and we did a global survey around those use cases. So the results are we have almost 5,000 researchers who've responded to this survey, covering 158 countries, 60 fields of study. This is probably, I can't say for sure, but this is probably the most comprehensive study of AI usage among academic researchers done to date. And here's some of the things we heard from them. I think I'm not using all the AI I should be, right? Am I missing something? Right? The sense that there's something out there, but not a lot of, I've got it figured out. Right? And so that's where we really wanted to break it down into the specific use cases. So we identified 43 specific times and places that researchers could use AI across 5 phases of the end-to-end process. So determining what to research, conducting that research, preparing the findings for publication, the peer review process, and then promoting and sharing the article, that content to the world. So we're going to talk about what we found in each of those phases. For each of the use cases, we asked them, tell us where you stand on these 5 dimensions here. How interested are you? Is this a novel idea? Is it new? How long will it take to be accepted? AI performance, who's better today? Human or AI? Where do we believe that the capability of the AI systems are? And what role do we want publishers to play in these different applications? And we really focused in on 2 of these dimensions. That dimension of interest, right? Above average interest. I'm really excited. I'd like to use this. And the ones below average. I'm not today, not me. It's not my jam, right? And then on the other dimension was, do I believe that humans currently are better at this? Or do I believe that AI is currently better? So what that allows us to do is think about those intersections and create these different quadrants. Right, in the top right are the highly popular current use cases. This is ready today, right? This is where I'm using them today. I want to use them. Why aren't I using them more? Makes sense. I'd like to use them. I think AI would be good at it. That's different than on the left, top left, where, you know what, I'm interested in it, but I don't think the machines are good enough yet. They're not better than humans. So we call those highly anticipated use cases. They're coming soon, hopefully. They're anticipated, but they're not here yet. On the bottom left, that's where it's neither particularly interesting, and I don't think that the machines are better than humans. Those are really the human-preferred use cases. And then finally, on the bottom right is, yeah, AI does it well, but I'm not that interested. So they're just less exciting, but we could be doing those today. So we plotted each of those 43 use cases along these different dimensions and into this framework. We're talking about 4 things that we learned from this research. The first thing we learned is research and authors believe this is inevitable. AI is inevitable. This is happening. We can't put our head in the sand. 69% of them believe that AI skills are going to be critical in the next 2 years in their field. This is not like, I got 10 years to retirement. I could probably wait this one out. 2 years, critical in my field, will be required. I'm going to have to sort this out. So clear trend. We got to figure this out, and we got to figure it out quickly. The second trend is that there are some areas where researchers are ready to go. They think that the capabilities are there. They'd like to use these tools, but the reality is they need help and they need guidance. 2 out of 3 of them say, the reason I'm not doing more in thinking about how to use AI in my work is I don't have guidelines, I don't have training, I don't know what is safe, ethical use of AI in my work. Who can help me understand that? I don't want to be on the wrong side of some issue if I use it in the wrong way. I can use spell check, right? That's okay. Can I use Grammarly? Grammarly probably okay, right? Can I use ChatGPT for a first draft of my abstract? Like, where is the line? Who's defining the line? How do I have to disclose that to my publisher and the authors? To the readers. So importantly, they're looking for this guidance, and where are they looking for it from? 70% of them expect publishers to provide a key role in describing what is safe, ethical use of AI, and what is appropriate disclosure. So this is clearly a cry for help. This is begging, with the qualitative work, begging for someone to help me understand how do I stay safe while experimenting with these new technologies. So, in particular, where are they excited and believe there's opportunity now? Where are the ready now opportunities for using AI? And if you think of the different phases, those 5 phases, the preparing for publication, so the actual authorship is where most of the ready now applications are. And so look at these green stars, right? This is where we have the ready, was it 6 out of the 9 are in that top right quadrant. These are the types of use cases that people are saying, I'm ready to go. Give me the guidelines, tell me the right tools. I'm willing to dive in and try this. And a couple, selecting the right journal, generating reference recommendations, creating an article abstract. Maybe those I'm not ready, but most of these I'm ready to go. So let's dive in a little bit on these specific use cases and think about what guidance would we give authors today around these use cases, or what tools could we give them? So checking their own work is a big area where they say, I'm ready for AI to help me there, right? Detecting errors or bias in my own writing, looking for unintended plagiarism, right? So a lot of the tools and investment we've been making in research integrity can help authors during the authoring process to check for some of these things. The actual writing process, writing assistance, formatting. The amount of complaining about formatting things into different submission guidelines. That article doesn't get accepted. You have to submit it to a different journal, different submission guidelines. The amount of cutting and pasting, reformatting. Can AI help me with that? Generating citations, checking those citations. Those are places where researchers are ready to roll. Also, in terms of once I get this published, how do I get it out there more? How do I create more plain language summaries for different audiences? How do I think about scientific education to get things beyond the spine, as one of my colleagues like say about books, get it out of the spine of the book and out into different use cases. So those are critical right now use cases. But I want to talk about what's maybe anticipated use cases. And the answer is that there's other places that researchers are asking for help. They think that's coming next, but the tools aren't there yet. They're not ready yet. And so those 43 use cases, 39 of those 43 use cases, researchers said, I'm interested to implement this in the next 2 years. And over half of those, they believe that AI was already better than humans at those tasks. So there's a whole category where there's an opportunity. Researchers are saying they're ready, but we're not implementing yet. And so these are what we call highly anticipated use cases. So if there's entrepreneurs or startup people in the room, this is your product roadmap. This is what they've said, this is what I want next. I want help identifying gaps in the literature. Where is there a hypothesis that maybe hasn't been asked? Or maybe where there are two studies that actually have conflicting results, and maybe there's an opportunity to do more research on that topic. Where can I look at an adjacent discipline to find how they've solved a similar problem and can now apply it to an unanswered question in my field? How can I see where the trends are going? How can I follow the funding, follow the publishing? Where are we likely to head in the future? I want tools for that. I think I'm ready for them. I just don't think AI is good enough yet, or at least the tools I've seen are good enough yet. Generating recommendations. What references might I use? How do I select the right journal to submit my article to? How do I identify the right peer reviewers? I like these tools. I haven't seen good ones yet. Administrative tasks, offloading those things that are just getting in the way. I think I spent a lot of time on funding applications, right? That's a lower risk activity maybe than writing my journal article for publication, but I would love help getting those funding applications written. And then once things are out there, how do I get more of these tools out there? How do I create the scientific communication tools, et cetera, so that more people can engage with my work? So that's the roadmap for where the products need to go next. So if you remember, we sort of talked around this framework. We've talked about the top right bucket. We said, ready now, give me guidelines, give me support, show me the tools, tell me how to disclose, because I'm ready to go now. Highly anticipate, I need better tools. Prove to me that these tools exist, that AI can be helpful. And then we're going to talk about the bottom left here with the last trend, which is where do we believe that human capability is most critical? And there's some areas, particularly around the peer review stage. So if you look at the top, this is the fourth of those 5 stages. This is the peer review stage. Remember we saw all those green stars before? Now we see a lot of gray triangles, right? This is where the human experience is preferred. And so maybe I'm willing to identify peer reviewers with AI, but once you're starting to talk to me about assistance in writing the peer review articles, giving automated feedback in terms of changes that author might need to make to the article, like now I'm starting to feel a little bit uneasy. And so the reality is, peer review, there's a lot of conversation on it. That's probably a phase 2, phase 3 area that is going to get addressed as we think about the AI revolution. It's probably not the first place where we'll see a lot of activity. So let me wrap up with what we've learned and then talk a little about the implications and recommendations and how we as Wiley are going forward with these and our recommendations to the broader field. So researchers are enthusiastic, but realistic. They're still largely standing on the sidelines. They want help and guidance on the types of tools and the types of disclosures that are permissible. And there's still a set of things where the human's going to need to continue to be in the loop, that human judgment is going to be required. And so it's really critical that we parse out AI into the specific use cases for specific individuals. So what does this mean for us as the broader community? We have a lot of stakeholders represented in this room who are part of the production of great ideas out into the world. So what do we need to do collectively to lead the community forward? And we see 3 calls to action that we're bringing forward to Wiley from this recent survey work, and we want to share here and encourage all of us to be part of these 3 actions. The first one, I've already hit on it about 5 times, is we have to help authors. and researchers. We have to empower them to understand which tools we can use, what does safe, ethical use look like, and what does disclosure look like. So if you take nothing else from this presentation, on Monday morning when you're back in your office, think about, what are we doing on this? Do we have clear guidelines? Have we looked at the tools? Have we scheduled a training? And importantly, what can we do collectively so we don't have 50 versions of the guidelines, but how do we think about the kind of shared guidelines that would help us figure out when I can use these tools and when I can't? I think the era of AI augmented creativity is upon us. If you imagine 5 years from now, great content being created, how much of that will be created with zero use of AI? Zero spell check, zero Grammarly, zero generate this bar chart from this data for me, right? It's easy to imagine that most of that content will be touched by AI. So how do we map the pathway for AI augmented creativity? So that's the first call to action. The second one is that we've got to look at these AI systems and demand ethical treatment and transparency, right? That we need to be thinking about, when do humans need to be in the loop? How do we think about bias? How do we think about what the ethical standards are? But also, how do we think about making sure that we can trust these systems? Trust may be the scarcest resource in 5 or 10 years from now. What can I trust? I may be an avatar, at next year's Frankfurt Book Fair at the rate we're going here. So I use a little acronym to think about what are the things that we want to push for here. I call it TPAC. So not Tupac, TPAC. That stands for transparency, protection, attribution, and compensation. So transparency, what went into these models, and what are any recommendations that are coming out of these models based on? If I'm making a medical decision for myself or a loved one, I want to know if that model and that application is using the discussion board from Reddit, a preprint server, or the version of record. And I want to know when it was last updated. When did it last look for retractions? Science is an ongoing dialogue. I want to know that is using the most authoritative content. So I don't know that today. I can't see the transparent data provenance of what's going on into these systems. So transparency is the T. Protection of copyright, right? We all know it's not even sort of the best kept secret anymore. We all know that these systems were trained on a lot of copyrighted content. And there's arguments being made around fair use and exceptions. And so we really need to advocate for strong copyright enforcement. And part of that is actually licensure, right? Creating a robust licensing marketplace supports the argument that there is access to this content, and it reduces the probability of fair use and exceptions. I'm actually going to be on a panel immediately following this session on this very topic of content licensing for AI. So we'll dig a lot more into that. I recommend people sticking around for that. So TPAC, so we talked about T and P. A is attribution. Attribution is critical in our communities. It's also really, really, really hard for large language models, right? Trillions of words have gone in. They got converted into weights in a model. Those weights were used to generate some output. So it's like having a giant stew that tastes really good and asking the question, which grain of salt gave it this flavor, right? Technically, it's just a hard task as much as we want to. And people are working on that problem, but that problem is not going to get solved in the short term. But as we start to get models that are the application of those models at what's called the inference stage, and people have heard the RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where we're actually using data in real time to create the answers, absolutely. We need to have standards and guidelines, make it really, really easy and really obvious to cite the authors, link back to the original source. So we collectively need to build that framework for attribution and to make sure our contracts and our partnerships with these technology companies build that in as well. And then the fourth piece is compensation, right? Honest pay for an honest day's work, right? And so that's pretty core. If you've used copyrighted material to train a model, we should, advocate for compensation flowing to those copyright holders. So collectively and individually, we need to push for this kind of transparency and ethics, and we will do much better leveraging the strength of the community and the scale of this community. Because in many cases, we're talking to big technology players, and when you sit down at the table with them, you want to have the scale of this whole community and the advocacy of this whole community pushing for this. And then the last call to action, this gets back to those tools that are not yet ready for prime time, right? The AI applications. All of this talk about models, we're just in the iOS versus Android era, right? These big tech companies, they're fighting over who's going to be the platform for Gen AI applications. But the value, 99% of the value is actually going to get built on top of that. It's going to be the application. It's going to be who builds the Salesforce.com, who builds TikTok, who builds Amazon. Like those are the applications that got built on the internet or got built on the smartphone platform. So we've got to spend less of our time talking about the platform and instead talk about the applications, the agents, and the assistants that are going to help people actually get their jobs done and create value. So we think that this community has a lot to say about what these applications need to do. We know what authors need. We have authoritative content. We can't do it all alone. We think that we ought to do it in partnership. So one of the things that we're really excited about, and we just are announcing this program today, is something we call the Wiley AI Partnerships Co-Innovation Program. What we're doing is we are working with startups and scale-ups and other companies to say, let's work together to build these applications. Let's take the know-how, the PhDs we have on staff, the authoritative content, the databases, the global networks, the society partners. They all have a voice to contribute into what these applications ought to look like. So how do we work with you, startup, who's got the tech and the funding and the youth and ignorance and things that I no longer have? And how do we work together to create these applications? And so we want to take these use cases that we talked about today, the ones that are high potential, and turn them into reality. There's a company that we've started working with as part of this program. They're based in Seattle, Washington. Their name is Potato. Potato is an AI research assistant for bioscientists. It helps them synthesize the research. What's the available literature out there around this particular problem? How do I quickly summarize it, identify related research? How do I generate a protocol or a method for the experiment that I want to run? How do I then run that experiment, not in the lab, but in silica, in the dry lab? Simulate that, the various combinations of that experiment, and find the couple versions that are most likely to be successful, and then run those in the wet lab. So they want to build that interface, that single one-stop shop to help design, simulate, and execute a scientific experiment. So we have authoritative content that plugs in to that literature review. They're generating protocols. They're just hitting a database of open protocols. Wiley has a product called Current Protocols. It has 25,000 protocols that have come out of journal articles that we've published over the years. It's the world's biggest catalog of protocols. So, all right, let's put that in their tool and see if we can make that tool more effective. And let's think about our global distribution network. How do we take this product to market that doesn't just leverage Potato's sales force, because they're only selling through grocery stores, and leverage the Wiley network? So that's an example of where we think we have something to bring, but not everything. And we want to create more of these partnerships because we think that's really critical for how we're leaning in to AI, how we're taking action experimenting, we're listening to our stakeholders, we're learning, creating, and refining our approach. And we think that that's going to allow us to reimagine the future. And ultimately, if we do that together as a community, we think that will allow us to shape the AI future, not be shaped by it. And I think that's the promise and that's the challenge that we all have. And I hope that some of this content that we're going to be sharing over the coming weeks and months will help us do that even better. I'm going to stick around and grab me and we can talk more about this or answer questions offline. But really excited to be launching both this research and be launching this exciting partnership program. And thank you for your time. We appreciate it.